I think we both had a specific opinion about each other. Certainly, I don't even know if I think he had me because I was just out there and I was always acting crazy and I'd never been in a movie before.
That kid DiCaprio won't be around in 10 years.
Matt Damon's dismissive prediction proved disastrously wrong. That kid they thought would disappear became Hollywood's most ruthless power player. But DiCaprio's most devastating revenge came against his closest friend. When Tobey Maguire tried to expand their casual film project without permission, DiCaprio felt completely betrayed.
I never had any intention of doing a feature film. The agreement had always been that this was a short film. I would never go in for one night and improvise with my friends and make a feature film.
That broken agreement would destroy their friendship forever. Maguire's team would later accuse DiCaprio's producers of threatening to weaponize the media against him.
Tobey led saying that I had told him, confessed to him, that we were planning on pitting the press against Leonardo DiCaprio, that the Variety article was a warning from us to Leo to warn him that we had a voice in the press and that we're prepared to use that voice in the press if he were to object in any way to Don's Plum.
Here are the actors who dared to challenge Leonardo DiCaprio and paid the ultimate price. Long before Leonardo DiCaprio became the king of Hollywood, he was just another young actor with an impossibly long memory for slights. In 1994, Mark Wahlberg was desperate to transition from rapper Marky Mark to serious actor. When the Basketball Diaries came along, it seemed like the perfect opportunity. Based on Jim Carroll's harrowing memoir about teenage addiction, the film needed raw authenticity that Wahlberg's street background could provide. There was just one problem. Leonardo DiCaprio didn't want him anywhere near the project. The tension had started months earlier at an MTV Rock and Jock charity basketball game. Wahlberg, cocky and aggressive, had blocked one of DiCaprio's shots and trash-talked the rising star in front of cameras. For most people, it would have been a forgotten moment of sports bravado. For Leonardo DiCaprio, it was a declaration of war. When Wahlberg's name came up for Mickey in the Basketball Diaries, DiCaprio's response was immediate and brutal. He demanded that Marky Mark would not be cast in his movie because of their altercation. The casting director, Avi Kaufman, found herself in an impossible position. She knew Wahlberg was perfect for the role. His Boston street credibility and musical background with Scott Calvert, the director, made him the obvious choice. But she also knew that alienating the film's star could torpedo the entire project.
Once I finally got to the point where I was able to audition and read with him, then we just both kind of looked at each other and were like, wow, we were literally out that night and became fast friends.
What happened next would become legend in Hollywood circles. Kaufman convinced DiCaprio to at least read with Wahlberg, framing it as a professional courtesy. In that room, something unexpected happened. Both actors delivered performances so powerful, so authentic, that their personal animosity transformed into mutual respect. The chemistry was undeniable. Wahlberg got the part, but DiCaprio's forgiveness came with conditions. Throughout filming, he maintained a cold professionalism that kept Wahlberg at arm's length. Their scenes together crackled with tension that served the film perfectly. Two damaged young men whose friendship was built on shared trauma rather than genuine affection. Years later, they would work together again in The Departed, both nominated for Oscars for their performances. On the surface, it appeared their feud was ancient history, but those who knew DiCaprio understood the truth. He never forgot the disrespect, and he never truly forgave it. Wahlberg was allowed back into his orbit because he was useful, not because he was welcomed. When actors become best friends, they're supposed to have each other's backs forever. But what happened between Leonardo DiCaprio and Tobey Maguire proved that in Hollywood, even the closest friendships can explode into warfare when money and reputation are on the line. In 1995, DiCaprio was part of an inseparable group of young actors dubbed the Pussy Posse by the media. The crew included Tobey Maguire, Kevin Connolly, R.D. Robb, and various other rising stars who spent their nights club hopping and their days dreaming about making films together. Dale Wheatley, a Canadian transplant desperate to break into Hollywood, had become part of their inner circle. When the group decided to collaborate on a film project, it seemed like the perfect marriage of talent and ambition. The concept was simple: a black and white, largely improvised movie about a group of friends hanging out at a diner.
Tobey led saying that I had told him, confessed to him, that we were planning on pitting the press against Leonardo DiCaprio, that the Variety article was a warning from us to Leo to warn him that we had a voice in the press and that we're prepared to use that voice in the press if he were to object in any way to Don's Plum.
The project that would become Don's Plum was supposed to be a short film, a creative experiment among friends with no commercial ambitions. DiCaprio agreed to participate for 2 nights of shooting, treating it as a favor to his friends rather than a serious artistic endeavor. But as the footage accumulated and the filmmakers realized they had something potentially valuable, the project's scope began to expand. What started as a 20-minute short was being edited into a feature-length film, complete with distribution deals and festival submissions. DiCaprio was filming Romeo and Juliet in Mexico when he learned about the expansion. His reaction was immediate and furious. He had agreed to improvise with his friends for a few hours, not to star in a commercially distributed movie where his unscripted comments would be preserved forever.
There's no way that can be a feature film. It's always intended to be a short.
Tobey Maguire shared DiCaprio's concern, but for different reasons. While DiCaprio was worried about the professional implications, Maguire was terrified of the personal revelations. Producer David Stutman later stated that Maguire had revealed personal experiences that would undermine his public image. During the improvised scenes, Maguire's character had confessed to sexual practices that the actor desperately wanted to keep private. The confrontation that destroyed their friendships happened at Kevin Connolly's house. Wheatley and the other filmmakers had been invited to what they thought was a casual dinner. Instead, they walked into an ambush.
Finally, Tobey loses it. He comes completely undone and he starts screaming, "I want Don's Plum to burn!" And he's screaming and his veins are coming out on his neck. And it was just rage, pure, unadulterated rage.
Maguire's rage was terrifying in its intensity. He accused the filmmakers of betraying their friendship, of planning to exploit their unguarded moments for commercial gain. But his anger went deeper than that. He was convinced that they were preparing to use the press as a weapon against DiCaprio and himself. DiCaprio's response was even more chilling in its controlled fury. He allegedly stated that his agents ran Hollywood and Sundance and that the movie would never see release. It wasn't an empty threat. It was a promise of complete destruction. Within days, Don's Plum was dropped from Sundance. Miramax, which had expressed serious interest in distributing the film, suddenly rescinded their offer. Other distributors who had been circling the project disappeared overnight. DiCaprio and Maguire had deployed their industry connections with surgical precision. The legal battle that followed was brutal. Stutman ended up suing DiCaprio and Maguire for $10 million in 1998 for suppressing the film. The actors countersued, arguing that they had never consented to appear in a feature film. The settlement that emerged was devastating for everyone involved except DiCaprio and Maguire. The film could be released outside the US and Canada, with certain scenes removed. Don's Plum could play in Europe and Japan, but it was banned from the 2 markets that mattered most. For DiCaprio, the Don's Plum affair was a masterclass in crisis management. By 1997, when Titanic made him the biggest movie star in the world, the controversy was ancient history. But for Wheatley and the other filmmakers, it was a career-ending catastrophe that left them blacklisted and broken. The true cost wasn't financial, it was personal. Friendships that had lasted years were destroyed overnight. The group that had once been inseparable splintered into factions, with loyalties divided between personal relationships and professional survival. DiCaprio emerged from the controversy with his reputation intact and his power consolidated. He had learned that controlling his image meant controlling his narrative, and that sometimes the price of protection was the destruction of everything and everyone that posed a threat. Romeo and Juliet is supposed to be the greatest love story ever told. But behind the cameras of Baz Luhrmann's 1996 adaptation, the 2 leads couldn't stand each other, and their mutual hatred would poison one of the most iconic films of the decade. Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet was DiCaprio's first major romantic lead, his chance to prove he could carry a love story that would define a generation. At 21, he was already building his reputation as a serious actor, fresh off an Oscar nomination for What's Eating Gilbert Grape. Claire Danes, just 17, was cast as Juliet after an exhaustive search. DiCaprio himself had championed her casting, telling producers that Danes should be selected because she was genuine in her line delivery and didn't try to impress him by acting flirtatious. That admiration would quickly sour into mutual disdain. The age gap was just the beginning of their problems. Danes was just 17 at the time, while DiCaprio was 21. Reports suggest that the young actress found Leo immature, while he found her uptight. According to sources, the pair barely spoke to one another when not filming scenes together. DiCaprio, known on every set for his pranks and jokes, found Danes to be resistant to his attempts at levity. Danes allegedly became fed up with DiCaprio's habit of playing pranks on the cast and crew, while he found her annoyingly reserved and uptight. The Mexico City location made everything worse. The heat, the pressure, and the constant presence of the international media covering DiCaprio's rising stardom created a pressure cooker environment. Miriam Margolyes, who played the nurse in the film, witnessed their dysfunction firsthand. She later commented that she liked DiCaprio tremendously and admired his work, but that she was immune from his groin charms, unlike poor Claire Danes. It was obvious to all that Danes really was in love with her Romeo, but Leonardo wasn't in love with her. The cruel irony was impossible to ignore. Danes had developed real feelings for her co-star, while DiCaprio remained completely indifferent to her as a person. Speaking to W magazine, Danes admitted that she had a crush on her co-star, noting that it was problematic because she couldn't really have a crush on the guy she was professionally having a crush on. Their scenes together required multiple takes, not because of technical difficulties, but because their off-camera tension was bleeding into their performances. Luhrmann, desperate to capture the passion Shakespeare demanded, found himself directing two actors who could barely tolerate each other's presence. The film's success only made their mutual dislike more problematic. Romeo and Juliet became a global phenomenon, grossing $147 million worldwide and establishing both actors as international stars. But success came with a price. They would forever be linked in the public imagination as one of cinema's great romantic couples. When Titanic was offered to Danes immediately after Romeo and Juliet wrapped, she turned it down. Following the success of Romeo and Juliet, Danes was offered the role of Rose in Titanic, which eventually went to Kate Winslet. Danes declined because she experienced fatigue from shooting abroad on Luhrmann's film and wasn't prepared for another challenging shoot. Officially, she cited exhaustion from the Mexico shoot. Unofficially, industry insiders knew the truth. Kate Winslet, who eventually took the role, would become DiCaprio's closest friend and most trusted on-screen partner. Their chemistry in Titanic was everything that Romeo and Juliet had lacked: genuine affection, mutual respect, and an ease that came from actually enjoying each other's company. DiCaprio never publicly criticized Danes, maintaining the professional courtesy expected of Hollywood stars. But he never worked with her again, and when her name came up for projects in his orbit, he consistently advocated for other actresses. Sometimes the most devastating defeats come not in boardrooms or on movie sets, but on a simple basketball court in Mexico. George Clooney's public humiliation of Leonardo DiCaprio would become Hollywood legend and create a grudge that lasted decades. The incident occurred in Cabo San Lucas, where both actors owned houses and maintained pickup basketball games that had become legendary among Hollywood circles. Clooney and DiCaprio had run into each other in Cabo and struck up a conversation based on their common interest in basketball. They each had ongoing games that had attained a celebrity of their own. Clooney suggested they might play someday. DiCaprio's response was telling. He warned that his crew was pretty serious. It wasn't just trash talk, it was a challenge. In DiCaprio's mind, he was the bigger star, the younger athlete, the one with everything to prove and nothing to lose. The game was arranged at a neighborhood court, with both actors bringing their respective crews. For DiCaprio, it was an opportunity to establish dominance over one of Hollywood's established leading men. For Clooney, it was a chance to teach a lesson about respect. Clooney later explained that he could play basketball, acknowledging he wasn't great by any means, but that he had played high school basketball and knew he could compete. He also knew that trash talk was only acceptable if you could back it up with skill. The thing about playing Leo, according to Clooney, was that DiCaprio had all these guys talking trash around him. What happened next was a systematic dismantling of DiCaprio's crew and his ego. Clooney revealed that despite being around 50 years old, his team beat DiCaprio's squad in 3 straight games, all 11-0. It wasn't just a loss, it was a shutout, repeated 3 times, in front of witnesses who would carry the story throughout Hollywood. Clooney's post-game analysis was devastating in its casual cruelty. The discrepancy between their game and how they talked about their game made him think about how important it is to have someone in life to tell the truth. He expressed doubt about whether Leo had someone like that in his life. For DiCaprio, who had built his career on being the smartest person in the room and the most prepared actor on set, the humiliation was profound. It wasn't just about losing a basketball game. It was about being exposed as someone who had started believing his own hype. The story became Hollywood legend, with Clooney telling it to reporters and friends for years afterward. When questioned about the comments, Clooney's publicist clarified that the Leo remarks were all made in fun about basketball, not about Leo's life, and that the writer and George were laughing about basketball buddies, but the damage was already done. What made the humiliation worse was DiCaprio's inability to respond. Clooney was too established, too respected, and too politically connected for DiCaprio to deploy the same tactics he had used against younger actors and filmmakers. Instead, he had to absorb the public embarrassment and pretend it didn't matter. Years later, when Clooney spoke about the incident in interviews, his tone remained patronizing. He told Esquire that Brad Pitt had been the biggest movie star in the world for a long time, noting that he was bigger than himself and bigger than DiCaprio. Even when discussing other actors, Clooney couldn't resist the opportunity to diminish DiCaprio's status. The basketball humiliation taught DiCaprio an important lesson about choosing his battles. While he could destroy younger actors or exclude difficult co-stars, established stars like Clooney operated by different rules. But acceptance didn't mean forgiveness. In the years that followed, DiCaprio and Clooney maintained a careful professional distance. They appeared at the same events, supported the same causes, and maintained the appearance of collegial respect. But they never worked together, never socialized privately, and never missed an opportunity to subtly undermine each other in the press. By the time Leonardo DiCaprio reached the peak of his fame, he had developed a sophisticated system for dealing with actors who crossed him. Unlike other stars who relied on public feuds or dramatic confrontations, DiCaprio perfected the art of quiet destruction, systematically excluding his enemies from opportunities while maintaining a public facade of professionalism. The pattern was always the same: initial conflict, failed reconciliation attempts, and then complete professional exile executed through his network of agents, producers, and directors. Once marked by DiCaprio, career options became limited to projects that existed entirely outside his sphere of influence. Christian Bale became an early victim of the system, though their conflict was more about competition than personal animosity. Bale's former publicist, Harrison Chung, published a tell-all book revealing how DiCaprio's name burned Bale like a branding iron. This boy's life marked when Bale began losing roles to DiCaprio. This trend continued throughout the 1990s. Bale also lost the role of Arnie Grape to DiCaprio in What's Eating Gilbert Grape. But DiCaprio's campaign against Bale went beyond normal industry competition. When Romeo and Juliet was being cast, Bale read for the part of Mercutio, but the production crew decided to go with an African-American actor instead. Industry insiders knew that DiCaprio had specifically requested that Bale not be cast. The most devastating blow came with American Psycho. Finally, Bale secured the lead role in the 2000 film, a project DiCaprio had previously expressed interest in. DiCaprio's response was swift and calculated, using his influence to ensure minimal studio support. Jack Black experienced similar treatment after publicly criticizing DiCaprio's Oscar win. While the majority of the public celebrated DiCaprio's long-awaited Oscar win in 2015, Black expressed support for Bryan Cranston, who didn't win for his performance in Trumbo. Black stated his opinion that Cranston was the better actor, and that while there was physical acting in The Revenant, the film was Oscar bait and Cranston's role was more demanding. Within months of those comments, Black's starring vehicles dried up, and he was relegated to voice work in independent films. Industry insiders understood the message. Criticizing DiCaprio's work publicly would result in professional consequences. Jennifer Lawrence experienced DiCaprio's passive-aggressive retaliation during filming. DiCaprio leaned toward the method approach to acting, whereas Lawrence was more spontaneous and instinctive, leading to one shooting day that Lawrence described as hellish. Rather than adapt his method to work with Lawrence's style, DiCaprio insisted she accommodate his preferences. The most insidious aspect of DiCaprio's punishment system was its plausible deniability. liability. Actors who found themselves excluded from major projects could never prove that DiCaprio was responsible. His influence was exercised through intermediaries, agents who steered clients away from DiCaprio projects, producers who suddenly lost interest in certain casting choices. A conversation that took place more than a decade after the Don's Plum controversy revealed how thoroughly DiCaprio had consolidated his power. Even billionaire producers acknowledged that crossing him was professionally. His influence extended beyond his own projects to encompass the entire ecosystem of A-list filmmaking. The system worked because it aligned with Hollywood's natural tendencies toward exclusion and favoritism. DiCaprio didn't need to actively destroy careers. He simply needed to remove his protection and let the industry's inherent cruelty do the rest. For DiCaprio, this approach offered several advantages. It maintained his public image as a professional and collaborative actor, while ensuring that potential threats were neutralized. Most importantly, it sent a clear message. Leonardo DiCaprio's friendship was valuable, but his enmity was devastating. The actors who crossed him learned too late that in Hollywood's power structure, forgiveness is a luxury reserved for those who never needed it in the first place. DiCaprio's grudges weren't just personal vendettas. They were calculated business decisions designed to protect his position at the top of an industry that shows no mercy to those who fall from grace. Anyway, that's it for the video, folk. Bye.